Hello everyone, my name is Cupid and today I'm here with Daniella of Native Child Family Services. Thank you so much for being here, Daniella.
Happy to be here.
Can you tell us a bit about your role in Native Child Family Services?
Sure. So my name's Daniella. I am Big Stone Cree, Italian Sagittarius. I'm also a PhD in human sexuality candidate in my spare time. And then in my 9 to 5, as I like to call it, I'm the supervisor of the Bakondigan team, which supports Indigenous survivors of sex trafficking, sexual exploitation, and those at risk.
Can you give us a bit of insight on what Truth and Reconciliation Day is and why it is important to recognize it?
Yeah, so the Truth and Reconciliation Day came out of the TRC's movement to really bring residential schools, the history of it, really the traumatic legacy into the foreground so that people could really understand just how difficult of a history it was for Indigenous people, how impactful it still is to Indigenous people today, and as a way to create an opportunity for healing, for relationship growth, and I guess ultimately for reconciliation.
What are the 94 calls to action and how are they important to the healing process?
So the 94 calls to action came out of the TRC as a way to, I guess, create some action items for people to meaningfully engage with on a number of different levels. So there's a lot of calls to action for the government to make very particular policy changes, program changes, and things like that, that range from everything from education to child welfare reform to sort of justice reform as well. So that as we sort of move forward and as we think about ways to actually heal within Canada, create healing opportunities for people and to improve relationships, there were actual steps that people could take.
Why is it important to learn about the history behind residential schools in order to prevent further mistakes?
So it's important to learn about the history of residential schools because the residential schooling system was not so much a schooling system as it was a system to create opportunities to abuse Indigenous kids, to take Indigenous families apart. And unfortunately, even though it was called a school and it wasn't really a school, there were a number of kids who went to residential school that didn't make it home. And so it's important for us to learn about this history, both so that we don't make those same mistakes again, and so that we can, I think, just be better as nations, as people, as a community, so that we can live in better responsibility, in better ways to, I guess, kind of just create a more peaceful, happier, healthier, community for all of us to live in. And when we talk about National Truth and Reconciliation Day, it also aligns with September 30th, which is also Orange Shirt Day or Every Child Matters Day, which is a day where folks wear orange shirts to commemorate exactly what I mentioned, those lives of those kids who went to residential school and those kids who never came home.
How prevalent is discrimination of Indigenous peoples in Canada to this day?
Indigenous people are discriminated against in a number of ways through the justice system, through the educational system, through lack of representation in different places, and unfortunately through overrepresentation as survivors of sex trafficking, for example, sexual exploitation, domestic abuse, substance use, and we're also overrepresented I guess within the incarceration system as well. But I do also want to note that even though there is discrimination happening in Canada and that we have been, victims and survivors of a lot of different things, that we are more than just our trauma, that we are incredible, resilient, wonderful human beings. We are scholars, we are educators, we are helpers in our communities, we are mothers, we are aunties, we are sisters. And so as much as I think it is important to recognize the history of discrimination and injustice, it's also important to recognize just how powerful a people we really are.
What does being an authentic ally look like?
It's about meaningful action to be a better person, to be a better community member, someone who honors the difficult history but doesn't live in their guilt, and someone who uses the gifts that Creator gave them to make the world a better, happier, more healthy place. It also means acknowledging when you have areas to learn. It also means taking opportunities to learn on your own. And it means using the gifts that Creator gave you to support, whatever sort of initiatives are important to you in the best ways that you possibly can. It doesn't mean that you have to necessarily do sort of a 180 shift. but it does mean that you have to sort of take accountability and take responsibility, and just honor those responsibilities that you have to those people that you're in community with. And I do also want to name that one of the teachings, the most important teachings that I have, is that a lot of times we're sort of taught about individual rights, but being in community, according to the Indigenous teachings that I was gifted, especially by my mentors when I was at the University of Guelph, is about being in responsibility to one another. So it's not about what you can do, what you are allowed to do by nature of your rights, but it's about what you should do out of responsibility to yourself and to the people that you're in community with, so that you can be the best possible person that you can be for self and others.
That was a beautiful answer. Talking about sort of like involvement and trying your best to educate yourself on the historic trauma, what can students do to educate themselves and involve themselves within the Indigenous community and support?
I would say pick up a book, pick up some, or watch a video, whatever your sort of media, of choice is, and sort of sit with it and think about it and reflect on it. There's some really incredible books out there. Go to your local library and sort of check out that section on Indigenous literature. If you're into poetry, look up Indigenous poets. If you're into art, look up Indigenous art. If you are someone who just wants to learn about the history, there's a lot of things that you can do that way. But I would also encourage folks not just to learn about the traumatic history, but also to learn about the incredible accomplishments that our people have had historically and continue to accomplish today.
Would you have any examples of, say, resources or events where Indigenous people headline?
Yeah, so given that it's September, I would say there's going to be a lot of things that you can check out. I would say check out the Toronto Library. They always have events going on, often a lot of book readings as well. Check out Indigo. They're always going to have a featured page highlighting those really important things that are, important to read at whatever given time. I would also say, check out Urban Indigenous Toronto. They're always posting about different events. Check out to see if there's like a local powwow in your area, if there's any artists that you can support. Even though September is a good month to start, I think that there's always, even just like small ways that you can sort of take action and learn more. And I would actually offer the advice not to sort of burden yourself out with resource finding in September, and actually make it a lifelong journey of learning and healing and growing if, I guess, being an authentic ally or being an authentic friend is part of your goal.
Thank you so much for your answers. It was lovely having you as a guest.
Thank you. It was really, really wonderful to be here.